Hey everybody, this is Dr. Gervais, and I was going to thank you for joining another edition of Latte Talk. However, this is not my interview, and I'm using my YouTube channel to render this video. So, just really quick, I wanted to introduce this town hall meeting we had on Zoom on June 27th, 2020. So, whenever you're watching this, this was recorded on June 27th. It was a phenomenal, great presentation, and I want to thank the speakers. I want to thank all three speakers. It was Hadrian, who was also the moderator, and he did a great introduction. Then we had Sherry with her personal experience and her beautiful talk, and also her recommendations of how we can educate ourselves. And then Jim kind of brought it all together, how we can go from individual to the community. So it's a very informative, amazing talk, which I hope you'll all enjoy. It is Baha'i-themed. What that means is most of the principles of the Baha'i faith are will be talked about in this video. The name of the meeting was A Unity of Mankind, a Pathway Towards Race Unity. As some of you may know, the main principles of the Baha'i Faith is unity of mankind, and that we are one race, the human race, and racial unity falls under that umbrella. So it's a very dynamic talk. It's a very raw, emotional talk, and I hope everybody will enjoy. I could not include all the questions and answers. Very well attended, and I want to thank the friends who joined us. However, I don't have time to get permission from everybody to use their voice, to use their video for this presentation, so I left that out. It was about an hour and a half after the talk, so this is about a little bit over an hour. So again, please enjoy. I want to thank the speakers once again, and have a wonderful day. We will have follow-up to this as well, and which you'll be informed. Thank you so much. Bye.
My name is Adrian Toure, for those of you who don't know me, and it is on behalf of the local spiritual assemblies of the Baha'is of Palm Beach Central that this event has been organized. And I'm delighted to be able to be here, and to have this most important conversation. So I think that we can begin, and those that are late can kind of catch up and join as they come on board. So I wanted to start with a few opening remarks, because this is not an easy conversation to have, especially at this time in the history of our country. And I wanted to start off by saying that we come with a humble posture of learning. We are all engaged in a process of learning, and we are not here to claim that we have the solution to this complex issue. We are here to start a dialogue. And what we have been asked to do is to start with a series of presentations, and then follow it up by having an open forum for discussion, a meaningful conversation with all of you, because we also want to hear from you and to learn from you. So the format will be, there will be 3 presentations. Sherry, Jim, and myself will be addressing these 3 topics. So I will introduce the subject at hand with a talk on the most vital and challenging issue. Then Sherry Rebecca Ishragi is going to talk about why it's not enough to call yourself non-racist. And then Jim will take us home with a presentation centered around a framework for action. So strongly believe that it is vital for us to stay away from partisan politics, which usually has an uncanny way of dividing us more than bringing answers or solutions. And so we will ask everyone to be kind, to be respectful. Again, we are here to listen and to learn. And if someone says something that is a bit uncomfortable, let's not attack them, and let's try to meet them where they are. So we encourage you guys to share your thoughts, quotes, questions in the chat while the presentations are ongoing, and to stay muted out of courtesy so that we can better interact with all of you. And then once we open it up for question and discussion, I will give you a quick brief tutorial on how to raise your hand and how to facilitate that aspect of the process. So I always like to start with this quote when it comes to dealing with the issue of race in this country. And this is a quote that Abdul Baha, the son of the Prophet founder of the Baha'i faith, shared with friends after he traveled across America. And he says, and this was in 1912, if the races do not come to an agreement, there can be no question or doubt of bloodshed. When I was in America, I told the whites and colored people that it was incumbent upon them to be united, or else there would be the shedding of blood. I did not say more than this, that I might not be saddened. But indeed, there's a greater danger than only the shedding of blood. It is the destruction of America. Because aside from the racial prejudice, there's another agitating factor. It is that of America's enemies. These enemies are agitating both sides. That is, they are stirring up the white race against the colored race and the colored against the white race. But of this, the Americans are submerged in the sea of ignorance. They will regret it. But of what use will their regret be after the destruction of America? Will it be of use then? So this quote highlights why this is the most important issue facing America today. And as you dive deeper into the Baha'i writings, because a lot of the perspective and inspiration from these presentations will come from the Baha'i writings, you come to understand that this is not just an important issue for America, but indeed an important issue for the entire planet. So when addressing the issue of racial justice in America, we must start with this concept of the oneness of humanity. And as you start to dive into the teachings, you start to understand that the issue of race in America is just a symptom of a disease. Just as a fever is a symptom of disease in the body, racism is a symptom of disease in society. Suppressing the symptom does not cure the disease, but curing the disease eliminates the symptom. The Baha'i international community is convinced that the disease from which society currently suffers is failure to recognize the principle of the oneness of humanity, and racism is but a symptom. If we wish to eliminate racism entirely, we must establish as the moral foundation for society the unshakable conviction of the oneness of the human race. So this basically tells us that the American struggle is our struggle, that there's no us and them, that it's not the black man's burden or the black man's struggle, this issue. We are one. There are racist people over here and loving people over there, and no one has this issue figured out. We're all in this together. And this issue is something that people have been struggling with since the founding of this country. And the fact that some of us are just awakening to this reality is another issue. But this is an ongoing struggle for many people that have not had the luxury to basically to ignore this. So we come to this implication of the reality that humanity is one. As Baha'is, we know that humanity is one. But how do we make this a fact? How do we create a just society that is built on the basis of this recognition and of this truth? We know it's not enough to just believe this in our hearts, right? We have a moral imperative to act and to view our personal, our social, and our institutional lives through this lens of justice. Indeed, this implies a reordering of society more profound than anything that we've ever achieved as a nation or as a people. And it requires the participation of all Americans, of every race and background, because it's only through inclusive dialogue, consultation, that we can hope to achieve a new moral and social direction. So how can we create this new framework for justice, this new model? This is the topic of our presentation today. And Sherry will address this from one perspective, and Jim will address it from another. When we think about this issue, we must start with this concept of independent investigation of truth. It's all about the search for truth. First and foremost, we must seek to understand the truth about both about the condition, the current condition of people of color in our country, and also the truth about the experience of the descendants of African slaves in the building of this nation and up until today. If we don't investigate this truth, we are never going to be able to build this new framework. And we all have a duty to educate ourselves first and foremost, because no one is immune to this disease. We're all part of this society. So we need to understand the nuances of institutional racism and why no one is immune to discrimination and prejudice. I don't care what you look like. I don't care where you grew up. It's like the air we breathe. And the truth of the matter is that through honest and truthful discourse about the current condition of our society and the deeply entrenched notion of anti-Blackness that pervade our society, I believe that we can make a shift. I put this picture here because this is very inspiring to me. It's the top 10 list of New York bestsellers, and it's all books on the issue of race in America. Clearly, people are educating themselves. And it seems like a shift in consciousness has happened in this country. And that should give us hope. People are seeking to investigate truth. So that is the first element, is to the independent investigation of truth as it pertains to the experience of the descendants of African slaves and the current experience of people of color. However, there is a second investigation of truth that is necessary in order for us to truly address this issue. And that is the investigation of the truth of the revelation of Baha'u'llah, the divine physician who brought the cure for the ills of humanity for this age. And I read the quote: "The all-knowing physician hath his finger on the pulse of mankind. He perceiveth the disease and prescribeth in his unerring wisdom the remedy. Every age hath its own problem, and every soul its particular aspiration. The remedy the world needeth in its present day afflictions can never be the same as that which a subsequent age may require. Be anxiously concerned with the needs of the age you live in, and center your deliberations on its exigencies and requirements." We as Baha'is know that we have everything that we need in the Baha'i revelation, the latest revelation from God to man. But it is through a twofold moral purpose that we can bring this reality to life. The developing one's potential and working for the welfare of society cannot be separated. For a person's moral standards and behavior shape his or her environment, and in turn are molded by the structure of society. So our faith is not an insular congregation, but a way of engaging with the world. Find it like-minded organizations and individuals that we can learn from and engage with in creating this new world that we want to build. So we must work to change ourselves and to change society at the same time. And that is what Sherry and Jim will be talking about. How can we do both of these things? How can we bring ourselves to account and at the same time engage in this community building process to create a new world? We cannot segregate the human heart from the environment outside us and say that once one of these is reformed, everything will be improved. Man is organic with the world. His inner life molds the environment and is itself also deeply affected by it. The one acts upon the other, and every abiding change in the life of man is the result of these mutual reactions. Here, I want to take a second to talk about this process of integration and disintegration. There are two worlds that are operating in parallel. One is a disintegrating world based on old values and belief systems, and another one is a new world. And in order for us to be part of the solution and to create this new world, we must have this twofold sense of purpose. Now, I think that this is a very important quote because many times people say, you just have to change hearts. You just have to change hearts. Or if you have faith, everything is going to be okay. And that is true. We must change hearts and it takes time. However, we must also be somewhat realistic and understand that there's urgency. We must change minds and we must change hearts, but we must also be focused on changing laws and engaging in social action. This is a quote from Dr. King. And I'm not going to read the entire quote, I'm just going to read the part that is in bold. And he says, "It may be true that the law cannot change the heart, but it can restrain the heartless. It may be true that the law cannot make a man love me, but it can keep him from lynching me." And I think that is pretty important also. As we awaken to the reality of the experience of people of color in this country and everything that it implies, I think that we are called to act, to change laws, to change minds, and also to change hearts. So the National Spiritual Assemblies of the Baha'is of the United States, the governing body for Baha'is in this country, have called on us to do three things: community building, social action, and public discourse. And they have shared with us a website very recently that I will encourage all of you to check out. And I'm putting it in the chat right now. If you're interested in getting more information, please also feel free to drop your email in the chat and we will send you a recap and a bunch of resources afterwards to take action, to make sure that those are not just words that are in vain, that we're actually taking the learnings and acting. So I encourage you guys to check out this website to understand these three components. At the same time, I was listening to an amazing talk by a friend, Dr. Arta Monjazeb, a Baha'i friend that lives in Sacramento, a Baha'i friend of Persian descent. And he was talking about his process of growth and what he's been through and how he developed a 9-step plan for himself to make sure that he's going to be part of the solution in creating this new world that we aspire to create. And I wanted to kind of walk you through his 9 steps because they really spoke to me. So the first is the need to educate myself. And we talked about this. It's the independent investigation of truth. It's bringing ourselves to account, identifying our own prejudices, as Sherry will highlight, but also reading books that are relevant. so many books that were on this list are relevant for us to be truly able to be part of the solution. White fragility, post-traumatic slave syndrome, the advent of divine justice. Those are just a few, okay? That is very important. Also, furthermore, that's just not enough to educate ourselves. We must also make sure that we are educating those around us. You can hear me okay? Okay, awesome.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So yes, it's not just enough to educate ourselves. We need to educate those around us, coworkers, family members, friends. It's not easy to have these types of conversations. When someone says something that is loaded with prejudice, it's not easy to call them out, but we have a duty to do so. Otherwise, we're part of the problem. Also, it's important to actively engage in the community building process that Jim will talk about, the 5-year plan for those that are Baha'is. And for those that are non-Baha'is, it doesn't matter whether you call yourself a Baha'i or not. It's about actively being engaged in the creation of a new world that reflects your values. He talks about not being colorblind. People want to be seen, acknowledge their suffering, never belittle their experience, and try to think of everything in the context of race. Where do you spend your money? What do you buy? From corporate-owned businesses that are perpetuating a problem, or from businesses and people that are actually part of the solution? Sometimes people say all lives matter, or talk about black on black crime. And unfortunately, those are statements that are often racially and that are rooted in prejudice, and where you're not acknowledging people's pain and suffering and life experience. So that's why we need to do more listening and to stretch our comfort zone and to not discount the experience of others. And to also increase our social interactions with people of color. And that means inviting them to eat, not just to say, oh, yes, I have black friends, but are they actually welcomed into your home? Do you have kids that play with African-American kids? Have you created a life that demonstrates your beliefs? In this book, The Advent of Divine Justice, we're called for spontaneous and informal associations with people of color, deliberately, in order to be part of the solution. And beyond that, we need to honor the contribution of African Americans in our society, because their contributions have been erased from the history books. And ultimately, we need to ensure that we're creating communities that are loving, welcoming, and safe. I live in a gated community, for example, just like Dr. Munjazeb talked about in his presentation. My community, I feel safe here. But would someone that perhaps had a different life experience feel safe in my community? That is a question that I needed to reflect on myself. So that's it for me. I've talked more than I wanted to. And I thank you for giving me the time and space to share some of my learnings. Now I would like to pass the baton to Sherry, who's going to talk about personal transformation.
Thank you, dear Adrian. That was a great introduction, especially the topic on independent investigation of truth, because we live in very special times right now. And as you said, there's a shift happening on the individual level and on a collective level. And the presentation that I have today is based on exactly that, which I cannot get to this one. Here we go. And it is based on my personal journey that I had the last couple of years, a journey of learning, reflection, and discovery. And the question was, what are you doing? Or is it enough to call yourself non-racist? And the aim of this presentation is to inspire everyone, encourage everyone to go to the same journey individually and ask themselves, what are you doing to bring about race unity and justice? I wanted to dedicate this presentation also to George Floyd, who was murdered in front of everybody's eyes to see, which sparked the outrage that is happening all around the United States and even the world. And unfortunately, this incident is not an isolated incident. It's happening more and more than we can imagine. This one just was perfectly recorded and sent to the world. A little bit about myself. I am not an expert on race issues. I have never personally experienced racism because, as you can see, I quite light reflection, I'm white passing. I also never really studied Black history, African American history in a higher institution, because I grew up in Germany, and in the school in Germany, they just teach us the basics about how the slaves were brought to the United States and the Civil War and then the Civil Rights Movement. That's basically what we are taught, but we are never going into the details. So basically, I don't have any qualifications that would make me do this presentation. However, I'm doing this because I am very passionate about justice. I do love my fellow African Americans and people of color. I care, and I want to be a part of the solution, and I'm still learning. And I think even though we all still feel inadequate of talking about this painful issue, it's better to do something than nothing and learn together. So as a child, I grew up as a Baha'i, and the main principles of the Baha'i is one, unity in diversity. So from childhood on, you're trained to see the world in a diverse manner, but yet you're encouraged to strive towards unity. We are told to eliminate prejudice of all kinds, whether it's social, whether it's gender, ethnicity, or nationality. And Baha'is always view the world as one country and mankind its citizens. So we have a world vision view. This illustration of all the children with different skin color and ethnicities dancing happily around the world, singing and smiling, these are very familiar images that was ingrained in my head as a child. And here's, for example, a quote from the Baha'i writings on unity. It says, "O children of men, know ye not why we created you all from the same dust, that no one should exalt himself over the other. Ponder at all times in your hearts how you were created. Since we have created you all from the same substance, it is incumbent on you to be even as one soul, to walk with the same feet, eat with the same mouth, and dwell in the same land. That from your innermost being, by your deeds and actions, the signs of oneness and the essence of detachment may be made manifest. Such is my counsel to you, O conquerors of light. Heed ye this counsel, that ye may obtain the fruit of holiness from the tree of wondrous glory." And again, a depiction of children of all ethnicities in the garden, because we compare every ethnicity and race to flowers in one garden that are all different, and yet they're all beautiful. It said in the writings, ye are all fruits of one tree, the leaves of one branch, the flowers of one garden. In fact, it's not only the Baha'i faith that teaches we need to treat each other the same. In Buddhism, it says, the golden rule in all the religions, so in Buddhism it says, hurt not others in ways you yourself would find hurtful. In Hinduism, it says, this is the sum of duty, do not unto others which would cause you pain. In Judaism, it says, what is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow man. That is the entire law. All the rest is commentary. Then in Christianity, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. In Islam, no one of you is a believer until he desireth for his brother that which he desires for himself. And in the Baha'i faith, it says, and if thine eyes be turned towards justice, choose thou for thy neighbor that which thou choosest for thyself. So the spiritual teachings and golden rule in all the religions are the same, which is to treat our fellow human beings with dignity and love. So this is the picture of a real Baha'i community. We are very, very diverse around the world. So since I was brought up with this worldview, I thought to myself, so I'm not a part of the problem. I'm not a racist, right? I've been growing up with all this. I can't be a racist. It turns out I was completely wrong. And I had to learn the hard way. I had to learn the hard way that that was not enough. And it was because I was Facebook slapped. It was about 2.5 or 3 years ago. And it was, to make a long story short, one of my friends who's of color, we are not very close, but she's a friend on my Facebook. She had posted a post saying how whites are treated when they riot after a football game, how the police is very nice and moves them slowly here and there, whereas when there is a riot involving more people of color, how brutal the police is. So, and then she tagged me on that one. I don't know why. I think it was fate, literally. And so another friend of ours had said, only love can cure this problem. And apparently didn't sit well with the people. They were like, when did love cure problem? And I said that, I commented on that post saying, in some cases, love can cure these hate, sometimes it doesn't. And one of those commenters asked me in both letters, angrily, give me one example where love has cured hate. So I was not really paying attention and I Googled something, love curing hate. And then what came up was Martin Luther King, and where he says hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. So I just posted that on there thinking, well, that's the solution, right? And whoa, I got such backlash on this one, starting with both letters again, angry. Did you just quote Martin Luther King to a Black woman? And I was like, well, what happened? I have no clue why all of a sudden I'm being aggressive. I'm talking about love, all these kind of things, you know? Anyways, that started the wake-up call for me. I was really, really, in a way, attacked. That's how it felt at the time. And I felt like, well, I'm not doing anything wrong. However, I was thrown into a vocabulary, a new terminology that I had never heard before. That involves, for example, white privilege, white fragility, voice policing, institutional racism, white savior complex. So I was bombarded with these vocabulary terminologies that I had never heard before. And I felt just aggressed, and after it was so hurtful for me, and I didn't even know, no, I'm so nice, I'm not saying anything bad, why is this happening to me? In the end though, I learned a lot of things by diving more into the matter, diving more into the meaning of each of these terminologies. They have a history, all of them, which if we don't educate ourselves on, we're just like shocked what is happening. We don't know what's happening. Anyways, it gave me a start into this journey of learning to understand so many things that we as white people say, and we don't think they are hurtful, they are hurtful. For example, a lot of white people say, I don't see color. So I know that the intention behind this is to say, I'm not judging you behind your color, okay? However, I was told that this can be very hurtful because that would mean you don't see me. You don't see my history. You don't see what I've been through. You're just dismissing it by seeing no color. And now in the aftermath, I realized, well, if the Baha'i writings compared our ethnicity and races to the flowers of one garden, which different colors, we're not supposed to be colorblind to these beautiful flowers. So we should see color, we should see the beauty in the color. And then of course we see a lot that people say, oh, our lives matter in response to Black Lives Matter. And this is also very hurtful. It's adding insult to injury. And it's some sort of a deflection, you know. I've seen a lot, some people, when people bring up the problem of racism, they raise an issue that is unjust against people of color. Often white people say, well, but this happened and that happened too. They deflect from this very serious problem. And we don't even realize that these are hurtful and that they are counterproductive. So that, as I said, that started my journey of a lot of reflection. And I came to several of these conclusions. First thing that was on my way to understand what's happening was my ego. At the time, we don't realize that. We're just like, what, you called me a racist? How can you call me a racist? I've been growing up with these things, you know? Then we're unknowingly socially conditioned. And especially if we have a lack of exposure, if we don't live where the majority of people are of color or African American, we can't know. So which is then the lack of knowledge that I was talking about. And then it's complacency. We are all busy with our lives and comfortable, which then is tied to the white privilege, and we don't make the effort understanding that this is such an urgent matter that we need to occupy our thoughts and action with. Another thing that I noticed was that we often clash by seeing just the anger instead of the pain. For example, when in that Facebook interaction, I saw the anger while I felt like, but my intentions are good. I'm being so nice. How can you be so angry? And I was trying to tell them, oh, you need to be nice to be heard, you know? Which now, again, after all this time of reflection, I'm like, how dare I tell them how to feel after all that they've been through? You know, they have every right to be angry, every right to express their anger. And my responsibility is to hear that anger and help to heal that wound that has been going on for centuries. And another thing that I realize, and we all should realize, is that my reality as a white person is completely different than the reality of someone of color. We can't imagine it because we haven't lived it. So ultimately, an attitude of utmost reverence for the history and pain of people of color have gone through and still do, whether I feel I had anything to do with it or not. We hear a lot of people, white people, including myself, that's how I felt, well, I had nothing to do with slavery. I'm not even from the United States. My ancestors are Persian, whatever. I was like taking off the responsibility of me and not realizing that it is my responsibility, whether I have anything to do with this or not, to know the history and hear about it and not be defensive about it. And on top of it, have such utmost respect and reverence for their history that makes them be called by Abdul Baha the pupil of the eye. And another thing is that we expect marginalized people to disregard their own emotions and calmly educate us, which is also wrong. So we need to do the work ourselves. They point us in the direction, but we have the responsibility to do the work. So besides recognizing my own obstacles, I had also learned to do some changes that I needed to do. As I said, first of all, getting rid of the ego and show utmost humility. I needed to stop talking, start listening, and stop being defensive. And this is not an isolated thing. This is why books like White Fragility are written, because this is a typical response of white people because we are oblivious. So we need to start reading, watching documentaries, learn the history, understand the meaning of all those terms that I listed earlier that are associated with racism, which is the new culture of this 2020. We need to start, as Hadrian said, include friends of all origins in our life. And if for whatever possibility it's not possible, like it's what I also did is add more diverse friends on our social media. I do have a lot of friends now of color and African American descent on my Facebook. I see their posts, and without commenting, I am learning. I'm learning what they see. I see now what they have been seeing all these years that I never knew. Or also follow Facebook pages that are particularly for Black people. For example, The Root. Again, we need to dive into that world in order to understand and see. We need to start speaking up against racism. That's why it's not enough to call ourselves non-racist. There's a book that says how to become an anti-racist. We have to become anti-racist and speak up if we see anybody having racial tendencies. And keep your camera handy nowadays, because the injustices that have been going on for centuries are now being exposed via the cameras that everybody has. And another thing that's important, in order for them to trust you and for them to be able to heal, you have to apologize. I apologized to that group, and I'm happy they accepted my apology, and that I'm learning so much more from them now. Whereas if you had any idea how the clash was 2.5 years ago, you could never imagine that we are practically friends now. So we need to continue learning, but also start acting. Here's a pyramid that is very helpful. we usually associate racism with the upper triangle here, which is overt racism. So lynching, hate crimes, KKK, that openly show their race, that they're racist. But the issue is way deeper. What I didn't understand at the time is that racism can go all the way to these parts that are, in general, microaggressions. You know, when every day you deal with microaggressions, like, oh, it's just a joke, or you see people clenching their bag when someone of color comes, and people see that, and you experience that daily. That is called microaggressions, and it's really taxing. It's emotionally draining when you have to face that every day. So we need to not only focus on this overt racism, we have to evaluate our own racist tendencies and the environment we live in, and educate and eliminate these daily microaggressions. So basically, this quote also helped me understand. I was talking all about unity and love and kindness, and this one comes to the point. It says, I'm wholly uninterested in a conversation about unity that's not rooted in the unrelenting pursuit of racial justice. So basically, talk is cheap. We need to, while we give love and understanding and unity, we also have to take concrete steps to dismantle these racial barriers that socially are disadvantaged for people of color. And here's a quote from the Baha'i writings from Shoghi Effendi. It says, let the whites make a supreme effort to contribute their share to the solution of this problem, to abandon once for all their usually inherent and at times subconscious sense of superiority, to correct their tendency towards revealing a patronizing attitude towards the members of the other race, to persuade them through their intimate, spontaneous, and informal association with them of the genuineness of their friendship and the sincerity of their intentions, and to master their impatience of any lack of responsiveness on the part of a people who have received for so long a period such grievous and slow healing boons. So this quote, it's extremely deep. I mean, just reading it now is not gonna suffice for us to really understand how deep it is. I recommend you put this on your refrigerator and read it daily, sentence by sentence. It's so deep. But most importantly, it says the white need to make the effort. It shouldn't be the burden should not be on the people who've been oppressed already. So words must be supported by deeds, for deeds are the true test of words. Without the former, the latter can never quench the thirst of the yearning soul. Again, it's about doing things, not just talking about it. And in another quote, Shoghi Effendi says, let neither think that the solution of so vast a problem is a matter that exclusively concerns the other. Let neither think that such a problem can either easily or immediately be resolved. Let neither think that anything short of genuine love, extreme patience, true humility, consummate tact, sound initiative, mature wisdom, and deliberate, persistent, and prayerful effort can succeed in blotting out the stain which this patent evil has left on the fair name of their common country. All these quotes from Shoghi Effendi, I believe, is from the book Advent of Divine Justice that I recommend everybody to read too. So, and here's the action plan. Whatever is best or easy for you. For me, it was easier to watch a lot of documentaries, but I'm starting to read too. Here are some documentaries that would be helpful to watch. One is The 13th, another one, American Son. And all these, take a screenshot if you want, take a picture. I watched The Hate You Give, When They See Us, and 13th. And I was so angry after I watched that. I was so mad of what's happening, what has been happening. And that's what made me realize, oh my God, if I'm so angry seeing this, how angry are people who are living this daily? And I was the one telling them, oh, be nice, talk nicely so you can be heard. So that's why light bulbs will go on as soon as you start doing the work. So some are posting on social media, some are protesting in the streets, some are donating silently, some are educating themselves, some are having tough conversations with friends and family. A revolution has many lanes. Be kind to yourself and to others who are traveling in the same direction. Just keep your foot on the gas. So there's no stopping. This is something that we need to integrate into our life, into our lifestyle. And last but not least, on a positive note, Abdul Baha says that in the end, the ages of darkness have passed away and the century of light has come. Ignorant prejudices are being dispelled and the light of unity is shining. The differences existing between nations and peoples will soon be annulled. Oops, my screen went away for whatever reason. Yeah. The differences existing between nations and peoples will soon be annulled, and the fundamentals of the divine religions, which are no other than the oneness and solidarity of the human race, are being established. So while as we know, we are in very special times, and hopefully we will achieve this in the end. So I'm giving the word back to Hadrian and Jimmy. Let me stop the sharing. Okay.
Thank you so much, Sherry. I think Jimmy is going to be our third speaker, who's going to continue to share some of his learnings. But I just wanted to again thank you, Sherry, we talk about a humble posture of learning, and I think you exemplify that. And I'm so proud to be your friend.
And neighbor now.
And neighbor, that's right.
I'm so happy to have you as a neighbor now.
Go ahead, Jim, you can take it away.
Okay, Hadrian, can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Share my screen. Well, thank you, Hadrian and Sherry, for your thoughts and insights. Hi, everyone. I'm Jim. I'm Baha'i from Wellington, Florida. And today I'm going to speak about framework for action from a Baha'i perspective. I think it is safe to say that most of us are saddened, angry, or confused, or maybe a combination of all, by the recent and not so recent events of racial injustice in America. I'm going to propose to you that one of those negative feelings that we're having, whether it's anger, sadness, desperation, or confusion, is not really justified. And I'll explain why. Shoghi Effendi says, all humanity is disturbed and suffering and confused. We cannot expect to not be disturbed and not to suffer. But we don't have to be confused. How's that possible that we don't have to be confused? Because I can tell you, confusion and doubt is right up there in the list of feelings that I'm experiencing personally. But the reason is actually quite simple, and it starts with the Baha'i Covenant. Baha'i Covenant refers to a line of succession that starts with the source of divine knowledge, which is Baha'u'llah, the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith. In 1863, Baha'u'llah revealed that he was the messenger of God for this age. And for the next 40 years, while enduring torture, imprisonment, and exile, he revealed the word of God centered around the principle of the oneness of God, oneness of religion, and oneness of humankind. Before his passing in 1892, he appointed his eldest son, Abdul Baha, as the head of the Baha'i community and the only authorized interpreter of his teachings. After being released from prison at the age of 64, he traveled the world to spread teachings of Baha'u'llah until his death at age 77. And after his passing in 1921, the responsibility of guarding the faith falls to his grandson, Shoghi Effendi. This was decreed in Abdul Baha's will and testament. And then finally, a few years after the death of Shoghi Effendi, the Universal House of Justice is formed to continue the work of the faith globally. Because of this covenant, not only has the Baha'i religion survived for over 175 years without division, the covenant has provided a continuity of guidance that is unheard of in the history of religion. So when Shoghi Effendi says that we should not be confused, this is why. Baha'u'llah, as a divine physician, brought the remedy for the ailments of the world. And it is the Universal House of Justice who applies these remedies for the needs of this day and beyond. A little bit about the Universal House of Justice. It is the International Governing Council of the Baha'i Faith, consisting of 9 elected members. You can see a picture of the Universal House of Justice in Haifa, Israel, below. Its formation is ordained by Baha'u'llah in the Book of Laws. Its main purpose is to apply the principle of the Baha'i teachings to the problems of today. The Universal House of Justice is active at all levels of society to promote social action and social change. At the top level of government, for example, the Baha'i community participates in the UN as a non-governmental organization in an advisory capacity. At the grassroots, though, this is where the important work is being done. This is where the hearts are changed, and this is where I want to focus the rest of my talk. Shoghi Effendi wrote this many decades back, but I believe it still applies, we believe still applies today. He said, indeed, the chief reason for the evils now rampant in society is a lack of spirituality. The materialistic civilization of our age has so much absorbed the energy and interest of mankind that people in general no longer feel the necessity of raising themselves above the forces and conditions of their daily material existence. There is not sufficient demand for things that we should call spiritual to differentiate them from the needs and requirements of our physical existence. The universal crisis affecting mankind is therefore essentially spiritual in its causes. He's basically saying the disease is lack of attention to our spiritual nature. Because of this, the greatest focus of the Baha'i community is centered at the grassroots level. So we've established that we cannot legislate morality or spirituality from the top down if we wish for it to be sustainable. Martin Luther King Jr., I think, agreed when he said, if the problem is to be solved, then in the final sense, hearts must be changed. So at the direction of the Universal House of Justice, the Baha'is' effort at the community building is centered around a set of activities that we call core activities. These activities are at the core of the Baha'i community life worldwide. These activities are part of a systematic program which looks similar everywhere in the world. Their purpose is to build vibrant, diverse, and united communities by a process of education, capacity building, and action. And I want to stress the word build here. These activities are meant to bear fruit, to build something better. These core activities are open to people of all backgrounds and beliefs. You can't build a community with just a small group of Baha'is. These activities are Baha'i inspired, not Baha'i exclusive. So the Baha'i core activities consist of devotionals or prayer meetings, children's classes, junior youth groups, and study circles. And I'll talk a little bit about each of those. Devotionals are gatherings that bring people of all backgrounds and beliefs together in prayer. These can be informal and can be held anywhere. They're usually done at someone's house. There's no clergy in the Baha'i religion, so anybody can host a devotional. Devotionals increase the spiritual character of the community. When we pray, we reinforce the bond between God and humanity. Devotionals also serve as foundation for discussion and action in personal and community growth, meaning this is a great time for community members to discuss these difficult issues such as race unity and justice. In what we call a state of prayer, the heart is open to have these discussions in a more kind and productive way. So devotionals are a key part of these core activities. Children's classes center around the moral and spiritual education of children ages 5 to 11. At this age, we introduce the idea of equality, and we teach spiritual virtues such as kindness, patience, generosity, honesty. Some children's classes may also include some service to the community. As you can see in the pictures, the use of arts plays a big part in these classes also. Junior youth groups are basically an extension of the children's classes, but now we're getting into more complex issues for children, preteens, and early teens between 12 and 14. A large part of this core activity is to focus on acts of service, so applying what we learned into social action. And finally, study circles. Study circles are groups of people that meet to study the course materials based on the Baha'i writings. The themes include nature of prayer, the creative word, and the mystery of life after death, amongst many others. And just like in other core activities, acts of service are an integral part of the study circle. So to conclude, the framework has been built, and Baha'is have been working for many years in the community building process and in the quest for race unity. We don't need to be confused. We are on the path and we have direction. Now, that's not to say we have all the answers, but we do have a strong foundation to build this new world. What we need, though, is more resources to join the cause. Again, whether Baha'i or not, this has to be done together. You don't have to be a Baha'i to join this important work. If you want to help, get in touch with your Baha'i friends and ask to help. The National Spiritual Assembly of the United States summarizes it this way. The aim is not unity in sameness. It is unity in diversity. It is the recognition that everyone in this land has a part to play in contributing to the betterment of society. And the true prosperity, material and spiritual, will be available to us all to the degree that we live up to this standard. Thank you for listening. I'll turn it now back to Adrian.
Thank you so much, Jim. I really liked the fact Sherry was talking about the changes that can occur on an individual level, and you were showing us the potential of what can be achieved through community building. I see that it's 9 p.m. and we had targeted 8:30 as an end point, but this was such a great discussion. I'm very happy that we got to hear from more people.
Adrian, I'm sorry, one second. I know you're ending this. I just want to say on behalf of the Palm Beach Central Local Spiritual Assembly, I want to thank all the participants that came on tonight and your incredible comments and feelings and sharing everything with us. This was such a powerful and raw presentation. And also on behalf of our LSA, we want to thank the speakers who spoke. And finally, to you, Adrian, thank you so much for putting this together and being such an incredible moderator. So thank you, everybody. I'll let you end up. But I didn't want to leave without thanking you and all the speakers and everyone who participated.
Thank you guys for giving us the opportunity to serve, and I'm so happy that we got such insightful comments from everybody, and let's do this again very soon.